WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We're getting the Maryland Crab Cake Tour back out on the road, and I'm going to be doing some Betty Boop giveaways at Conrad Seafood on Friday, May the 6th. But right now, I am drinking the Royal Farms coffee out of my Cole Roofing mug here. Bill Cole joins us now, live via satellite. He was detained during March and early April. Man, you missed opening day. You missed March, May. But here's one thing you didn't miss. The World Cup coming to Baltimore. And I know you have refined taste now as far as global sports. I mean, you've picked up various things on the side, aside from Ravens and O's, as the O's continue to flounder. But how are you, man? Good day to you. Thanks for the call.
I'm good. Yeah, no, I'm glad to see the mug is still kicking, that we didn't lose it or break it in the meantime. So that's always a good, good week's work.
I'm weirdly attached to it. I really am.
That's good. Strange things like that happen in our lives. You never know. So
well,
it's fine.
The strangest thing ever. And nobody is like onto this yet, maybe. I don't know. Like that the World Cup could be playing like lots of games here. And for the first time ever, and I told this to Steve Goff from the Washington Post, who I've known for 35 years covering soccer back in the 1980s when I had a notebook at the newspaper. Steve Goff came on and I said, it's the first time you people need us. Mm-hmm. The Washington bid needs our stadium and our downtown thing and our stadium where the toilets flush and we're right on the line. I mean, they're going to run that MARC train up and down.
Sure.
Wow. I mean, this would be an unbelievable thing for Baltimore.
Yeah. Did I see like something about all games will be played at M&T Bank Stadium?
See, this is where I had to do a little work, okay? Because The announcement happened, and I've been in on this from the beginning, right? I've told this story. I think you knew me back in 2010. I did a soccer festival with Scott Westcote, one of the great people ever, who lives out in Colorado now. We did a soccer event on the square. Don Moeller was a part of it. Nancy Hafford. Let's see. Kevin Kamenetz was the CE then. It was after Jim Smith. It was first term Kamenetz. We had the square at Towson, right on the plaza at the Towson Government Plaza. And we put up big screens that Comcast Xfinity never paid the $10,000 bill for. If you see Paul at Comcast, please tell him I'd like my 10 grand back. But nonetheless, we threw an event that day and they brought me a USA jersey. I could go find it. It said 22 on it. The number was 22 and it had Baltimore on the back. Terry Hasseltine brought that to me. And, I was all about soccer, the World Cup, Baltimore, a bid, our stadium, like all that, thinking like the harbor, this natural setting that I saw in Berlin in 2006 would be a place they could bring barges in with screens and you could have the Spanish fans on one side and the Korean fans, whoever's playing, you know what I mean?
Sure.
But so I dreamed this dream. I took it to Ed Hale. I took it to Stephanie Rawlings Blake. I took it downtown to Bopa or whoever, whatever was running or not running, whatever thing in 2007, 8, 9, 10. I took this idea to do this thing and then I did it myself. I lost my ass. It was the worst idea I've ever had. I've never lost more money. Again, Comcast, thank you very much for not paying the bill. So this was in 2010. I almost went broke, literally. It was after the market crash. Was terrible. So I did this event in 10 and all I had to show for it was a Baltimore 22 jersey trying to get the 22 World Cup, which would have been this, only to find out how flagrantly, horrifically corrupt the FIFA people were, right? They wind up giving Russia and Qatar, these authoritarian governments, because there were bags load of money that the American guy was in on. Google Chuck Blazer. You can Google Donald Trump next to his name because he lived in Trump Tower, but Google Chuck Blazer, Blazer. He's dead. And I talked about all of this stuff, but the notion that when I was at this press conference last summer boiling, that this was like in some way more than a pipe dream or a non-reality. Maybe all along they realized that the Achilles heel of the DC bid was going to be FedEx Field. But I thought, they're FIFA. They take bags of money. They don't care about the pitch. They need the World Cup in Washington. They're going to apparently FIFA came in and the toilets aren't flushing and the railings are falling and Dan Snyder might be in prison by then. And, who knows that they they hated the stadium. So they hated the stadium so much, and Baltimore's here with like a whole bid that they're like FIFA, and apparently from all the information I've gotten, and again, you can go watch Steve Goff, you can watch Eric Fisher, Marty Conway's coming on. I'm having Kenny Cooper on today to talk about the World Cup of Baltimore. So it's going to be great. But the rub in all of this is that we're sitting here with full infrastructure to do it. And DC, because traditionally the capital of the host country, kicks off the games where the host country comes out with a flag, and the U.S. team would host Morocco or whatever in the opener. We're not far off. We're 4 years off on this. This is not far. This isn't 2032 or some subway that's never going to get built. This is like they're going to make a decision on this, and I can't begin to tell you how big this would be for Baltimore, right? But I don't think people are thinking about it. Like if we got an all-star game, they'd be crazy. About a Super Bowl, they go, this is like a month's worth of Super Bowls. This would be better than any Super Bowl we could ever have here. I've been to 28 Super Bowls. I've been to one World Cup. This World Cup here, if we get the bid, we get all the games. And FIFA and the North American soccer community made this happen because DC was unacceptable. The only way to get DC under the rope was to use our stadium for all the games.
Yeah, but I'm trying to do some research here as you're talking. Like, I thought when it was in Brazil, there were like 6 stadiums they used.
No,
like they had to build.
Hang on. They built things. They built all the stadiums in Qatar. So I can answer all this for you. I'm a little bit of a World Cup nerd, right? I mean,
I understand. Yes.
I've traveled to the World Cup.
Please.
I plan to go to South Africa. I at one point, and this is because of Scotty P. So next time you're down there on Meatball Monday, Scotty P and I in 2002 made plans to go to South Korea and Japan for the World Cup, and he bailed. We didn't go, and they went to the Grade 8. They won all. It was the year they were amazing. We threw huge parties down, and people still email me about the parties we threw down in Canton for the Mexico game back in 2002. So this has been a couple of decades of me wanting something like this, losing a ton of money on a soccer festival here, thinking that someday, somehow, some way, our city could be a part of this. And it's different than and people are like the IRL. And I know you're into F1, and I'll give you your space on that. And it's different than an Army Navy game, or Ohio State's coming to town. We're playing a couple of cross games and 30,000 people might show up. This is a whole different level. This is like, if we are Washington and we get their games, we'll get quarters. There'll be like 6 or 8 games here, and we'll probably kick off the entire tournament, probably, because the mall will be used like the river was used in Berlin. The mall in DC is where the watch party will be.
Right.
If you're going to the game in Baltimore, you go up to the train station and you get on the mark, and you're in Baltimore 35 minutes. And it's no different than being in Sydney, Australia, where if you went to the Sydney games, that stadium's 80 minutes out of downtown. I went to that stadium to see Springsteen. It took me all night to get there on a subway.
Right. So it says there's 64 matches played.
Well, right. This is the difference with Brazil. There were 24 teams in the tournament. They're expanding the field to 48. There's going to be a lot more games in the World Cup in 26.
But this bid,
By the way, this is my cheap shot. It also allows the Italians to get in.
Right. Yeah. So it was post that. Right.
Yeah.
So the bid that we're putting in to win this is for all 64 games to be played at M&T Bank Stadium?
Oh, no. Okay. So here's how it's going to work. Here's how it's going to work. This is different. So much like South Korea and Japan in 2002, it's a multi-country bid. It is a North American bid. Here's what happened. And this is like, I'm great that we're talking about this, because people might be interested in this, and it may lead them into a bigger pitch or a hole to learn about this. I remember the morning in 2015, and please, if you really want to learn, go listen to Grant Wall, go listen to Steve Goff, the people that I've had on. I mean, Grant Wall is the premier soccer writer in this hemisphere, and he took it 40 minutes. He lived in Baltimore. His wife is an epidemiologist who's on CNN. He lives up in New York now. Grant Wall's one of the great soccer writers the greatest soccer writer of our generation. So he came on and explained all this. He's got all these insiders. He doesn't think we're getting the bid, by the way. He thinks somehow there are 10 cities in his mind ahead of Baltimore, thinking Houston and Dallas will get the bid. So Mexico and Canada are in on the bid.
Right.
Toronto's getting games. Vancouver bailed because they lost all that money with the Olympics, right? I mean, it's not politically. Chicago bailed. Chicago just bailed after the Olympic stuff. At one point, Boston has bailed. Boston proper has said, we're not funding World Cup games in Foxborough.
Right.
But Mr. Kraft is in on this. So the NFL owners, led by the Hunt family, Lamar Hunt, the owner of the Kansas City Chiefs, is a lifer, has always wanted the World Cup here. He was the chairman in 94, bringing the World Cup here when it came here in 94, and nobody had heard of soccer back then, right? And the Rose Bowl and all that. So they're using MetLife and SoFi as primary stadiums. Jerry's World, Dallas will get a bid because of the stadium. But Kansas City, Santa Clara, places they played Super Bowls. Seattle has an amazing soccer community and a big bid. Canada FIFA pulled Vancouver back in, I guess, to give them games, right? Edmonton has a bid, and Edmonton has a really multicultural soccer community. And there's a thought that the mountain time zone would want games or have games. Denver also has a bid, but apparently not a very good one. Miami and Orlando are in on this, and there's a thought one or the other, and it won't be Orlando because they can't make money in that crappy stadium, that Citrus Bowl down there.
Let me back up a little bit. Has it already been determined that North America will host that year's World Cup?
2026 is North America. So in the middle of June, they're going to pick the cities. All of these cities are bidding, right? There are also some bids from Cincinnati, Nashville, some places that probably aren't going to get it,
right,
but places that probably are. They're going to be 10 cities in America, 10 bids in America, 3 in Mexico. Guadalajara, Mexico City, Monterrey, they're in. Canada, Toronto's in. There's a thought that Edmonton and Vancouver, might get a game or 2 or 3, right? But in America, there's going to be 10 sites. So do the math on this. Boston's going to get games because of Kraft. New York has MetLife Stadium. They're getting games. Philadelphia has a crazy bid that Comcast, apparently, they took the 10 grand that they didn't pay me back in 2010, and they're all in the bid in Philly, that they have a true corporate all-in media sponsor, that the money, these are FIFA, dude. These are thieves.
Sure.
These are crooks. So the reason they gave North America the whole bid was to engage Mexico, great soccer country, engage Canada and the US that have become this since 94, and give the whole bid to all of North America. So 10 cities, do the math, right? So like I only have 9.5 fingers, but New York, LA, Dallas, Miami, the obvious places. And then there's Atlanta, Philadelphia, Boston, Seattle, sort of the next round, that Santa Clara, that feel obvious. How does DC compete with that with a crappy stadium? Well, they weren't. So the bid is now Baltimore and DC, with the thought that Baltimore will get the games. Baltimore will be the stadium.
Got it.
And DC will be the party. And that's how they get DC in and keep the nation's capital in and fly the flag and do all of that stuff.
So yes. You'll get, you said 10, 12, 14, 13. So you're going to get like 4 games, 5 games?
No. Some sites will only get 2. Some, like, if you go back to the history of the World Cup, and again, I've been looking at this for a long time. There are some places that only get 2 games, that just get a kiss on the cheek to be participatory. So in other words, like, instead of saying Dallas, you get 8, and Houston, you get 8, you know what? You get 4 and you get 4. And Baltimore, instead of you getting 8, you get 4. You get 6. Boston, you're in, but you only get 4 because MetLife, we're doing 8 in MetLife. We're doing 10 at SoFi. We're doing 8 in Miami.
The championship game will be in Mexico City.
No, the championship game will be at MetLife in New York, probably, or SoFi. And there's also a thought the LA bid has the Rose Bowl involved. Right. So the Rose Bowl and SoFi, there could be 2 sites in LA. So that's another, and that's not uncommon. There were 3 sites in Johannesburg.
Right.
When it was in Paris, there
Vegas
are three
isn't
sites.
isn't Vegas now the sporting capital of the world, so
Vegas, no
they'll
bid in
have to get one.
Vegas. Vegas does not
Oh.
have a bid. No, Vegas is not a part of
And you
this.
said Chicago's out,
Chicago's
right?
out, right? Correct. And Denver doesn't smell good for some reason. For some reason, I don't know why. This is according to Grant Wall, but Grant Wall
Right.
did the math and said we're still 11th. That it's going to take a
Uh,
Houston, Seattle, Santa Clara, Atlanta. I mean, everybody thinks Philadelphia's in. Philadelphia
Right.
apparently has the strongest financial bid from all the non-New York, LA places, right? Or Jerry Jones. But the
So what are
NFL is
the
way in on this because of the stadium.
right? So what kind of economic impact do they project? You know what I mean? Like if you get 2 games, is that I don't know, that's 140,000 people that come to the stadium that didn't
I'm
previously
glad you're asking
come,
me
but
about this because I'm having Pete Caringi on later from UMBC. And
yeah,
Pete's played to me, and Pete's been involved with this from the beginning. And, Pete's a soccer coach, but he's also, pretty worldly guy about the World Cup. The
right,
issue with all of the teams, and now think this through, they come and base in a place, right? So the
right,
U.S. based in wherever they based in Brazil, in a city, and in that hotel, and they practice there, and then you play every fifth day, give or take, right? So the
right,
tournament, in the old tournament, was 24. It was groups. You were guaranteed 3 games. When you got on the plane and flew to South Africa, you had three
right,
games. You
right,
get there 2 weeks ahead of time. You live in a hotel, you base. The media comes, the whole country comes when it's Germany or France or Portugal or anywhere
sure,
that's not here,
sure,
right?
sure,
So if the German national team based at the Four Seasons in the Inner Harbor because their games were Philadelphia, New York, Miami, and every German fan in the world wanted to
yeah,
be around the team and watch them practice for a month.
right.
They would live in this city. Now, that could be the French team, the Italian team, it could be any team. Petey told me, and I'm going to talk to him again a little later on. You can go check all this out at Baltimore Positive. By the way, Bill Cole's here, Cole Roofing and Gordian Energy. He's my pal, and he was asking me about soccer. So
Do we
I
have
can
to
talk
hurry up and,
draft and Orioles and all that, but like
no, this
this
is
is the
good.
biggest sporting
Yeah,
event
this is
in
good.
the world, and I really need to educate the audience as to
Right.
how. So you're asking me what the economic impact is. Well, is this a lacrosse weekend? Dude,
Right.
this is a whole different thing that I thought we would never get games, right? I thought Terry Hazeltine, and I'd be glad to tell him this. We're barely in the top 10 and we have DC. By the way, Kansas City's almost a shoe-in because of Lamar Hunt. You with me?
Yes.
So even though it doesn't sound normal and their stadiums out in the hinterland, they're not a great site. And
Right.
they may give them a kiss on the cheek and say, you only get 2 games. We're going
Right.
to give Baltimore 6 games because they're attached to the DC bid, and they have a better stadium. They have more skyboxes. They have hotels downtown. They have walkability. They have
Do we
a
have practice
boundary where we can
facilities?
protect people.
Right. Do we have practice facilities?
Well, this is where Petey comes in. UMBC, Loyola, Towson, Maryland, Morgan, down the list, right?
Right.
Essex these community colleges have nice places. All of these places are potential that if we lose the bid or if we win the bid, Terry Hazeltine and his people, the economic committee, gets on the phone with the Senegal folks and says, hey, you guys don't have the money that the French have, so maybe you want to stay at the Towson Sheridan and work out at Towson University during
Right.
June of 2026 for 3
Right.
weeks, 4 weeks. You take over the hotel, we cordon it off. You're right by DC where all your diplomats and your politicians. That's why I thought this would work, Billy. Dude,
Yeah.
you have no idea. I did not have a Cole Roofing mug. My wife would tell you how many times we sat on the promenade right below my finger, literally at this park right here. And I looked out over the harbor when I came back from Zurich, Switzerland, Amsterdam, and 4 cities in Germany. This is before the kid saved my wife's life. We were in his hometown in Dortmund. And I came back and I dreamed the dream that this would be a place in 2010 and 14 and 18 that could make a 22 World Cup bid real here, that we would get games, would be to have the city come all in on a festival. And the reason the festival would work here is we're on the train line. DC has the most international community in east of the Mississippi. New York's 3 hours away. That if we put games on barges and made it Disneyland for a month. Now, this is before all the crime and like all
Right,
this is in
right.
2007 and 8 and 9. This is when the Orioles were in the tank and the Ravens had just won the first Super Bowl and Billick was still the coach. Like, this is how far back I'm going, that I took this concept of Soccer Town, America, USA to influential people in the city and in the state at the time and said this would be a great idea because people would sit on Federal Hill and
Yeah.
watch barges and the whole harbor would light up at what Light City was, but do that
Right.
around a soccer ball every
Right.
fourth year around the World Cup, and people would come. So this was a dream I had about doing something in this vein. The fact that we're 6 weeks away from maybe getting games. Eight. If we got one game, it'd be a big deal, but
Right.
we won't get one. We'll get 4, 6, 8. It'll be like that. It'll be a significant package because DC's getting none. We're getting their games.
Right.
News came out over the
Right.
weekend on a Friday news dump,
Yeah. Saw
and
that.
it's a really, really big deal because it would be a month-long incredible. It would be bigger than any Super Bowl by exponentially, man. Like believe me, I've been to Super Bowls. If we had a Super Bowl, people would show up on Thursday. People from New York would take the train down and they wouldn't come at all. So all of
Right.
that, it would either be a local regional thing the way it was in Indianapolis at the Super Bowl,
Right.
or it wouldn't be it wouldn't be the economic impact that you think. I mean, I've been to Jacksonville and Detroit and these
Yeah.
oddball places that get Super Bowls, Atlanta, and to some degree, it's more trouble than it's worth for a lot of
Right.
like the IRL was way more trouble. How's your F1 life doing? You doing all right with that?
No, well, yeah, but so I think we should find out what it takes to put up at least a practice field in the harbor. Like, even that would be really cool. So if one of the teams is staying in one of the downtown hotels, we put a temporary practice facility that floats out in the harbor that they can practice on every day and people can watch. That would be really cool. I'm not sure how that is capitalism, but it's still really cool. I'm, I
It's
don't,
bigger than you can conceptualize because of the
I,
rapidity of fans. Like whether it's El Salvador playing here or
yeah,
Trinidad playing here or Morocco playing here or Senegal playing here or whoever would be playing here,
I think I would,
it would be insane. They will sell every ticket in this country. They
yeah,
will.
I think I would love to, be able to sort out, and maybe this is probably handled by someone, but whatever. Like any of the teams that stay local to Baltimore, right? They are here for a long time, and there is tons of like downtime. So trying to figure out how to coordinate an experience with those teams and kids in our community. I mean, there's a pretty good soccer fever in our town, I believe. You know what I mean? Like it keeps growing and growing and growing. And I think we went through the complete know nothing period, and now we're in this like teenage years where it's really sort of ugly as we try and figure out what club soccer is and all this stuff. And it's just kind of
I
a
think Grant
mess.
Wall said this to me. The over 40 crowd, you and me, soccer was never cool. Like
Right.
other than Kenny Cooper, and we'll talk to him about that. And one of the reasons Pete Caringi always loved me is because soccer wasn't cool, but I tried to make it cool. Bring it in with the Orioles and the Ravens and the other things that are going on, as I've always done. I've hosted World Cup parties and all of that stuff, but like if you're under 40, I had Carl Delmon on last week talking about the Harrisburg Heat and his team and
Right.
his
Right.
Celtic team and like kids
Yep.
playing
Yep.
soccer.
Yep.
Like it's not by 2026, your 14-year-old is going to be 18, your 16-year-old is going to be 20. Like soccer is by far cooler than baseball in this country by a lot. And by 2026, when the whole world comes here and people understand it a little better, and especially if in this community we get games, it just would be the upset of all upsets. It'd be the biggest thing that's happened here from an upset standpoint since the Ravens came here.
Well, we should totally change the way you talk about that. Like, at what point do we stop talking about ourselves as the underdog, or do we just love being the underdog? We do love being the underdog, but like, how can you come to this country? How can you come to North America and not have soccer in Baltimore?
There
Like,
you go. I like
look
that.
at the picture behind you. Look at the picture behind you. Like, give me a break.
Right.
Like that. Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Well, that's what Terry's saying, and that's what they're saying,
Yeah.
and now they're saying this. So I want to give you a little story because I don't know that I've told this one on the air much. Back in 2006, I was Budweiser sponsored, right? So I was going to go to the World Cup, and we wrangled a hockey Meg and her boyfriend Kenny Ball game. And the four of us, my wife and the two of them, we went over to Amsterdam, and we got a flat for 2 weeks that was 90 minutes here to Philadelphia away from games. So we had a rental car. We didn't train. We drove because I got the speeding ticket going through Arnhem. And we went into Gelsenkirchen for the U.S. game. We went into to Dortmund to see Trinidad play Sweden. And I have video of all this. You can find this is 16 years ago now, right? But the interesting story is I really wanted to go to the U.S.-Italy game, which was the big game. It was in Kaiserslautern in the Rhineland down south near Switzerland, actually near Italy, not far from Italy. And the tickets it was a Super Bowl ticket. In 2006, it was a $2,000 ticket. And Budweiser said to me, we can get you tickets for any game you want except that. We can get you semifinals tickets. If you want to go to Berlin, see Argentina play, whatever. And we're like, and the World Cup is one of those things that it starts June 8th and ends July 12th. It's 5 weeks long. You pick the beginning or the end. And if I wanted to take quarterfinal games and sites and just say, I'm going to be in Berlin, Budweiser would have sold me, but the tickets were reasonable. They were $80. They were they were legitimate corporate tickets that I bought, and I bought them for the 2 games they offered them. And I'm like, well, it'll be a good time. We're going to see the U.S. play their first game. U.S. gave up a goal 30 seconds in, another goal 2 minutes in. They got their ass kicked by the Czech Republic. It was horrific. And it was in this awful Metrodome dome in Gelsenkirchen that had no charm. And we got our ass kicked. The tailgate was good, but it was awful. So we drove back, and then we went into Dortmund to see. We actually went to the Trinidad Sweden. So we went to 2 World Cup games, beat the drums, drove into Germany, checked our passports, got speeding tickets, and hung out in Amsterdam every day. Every day in Amsterdam was a party. There were 3 games a day, all day long. The Brazilians, we were on a boat in the canals. The Brazilians were hanging off of balconies, singing Brazilian songs every day for 10 days in Amsterdam. It was less fun to get in the car and go to the game than it was to just hang out in Amsterdam, right?
Sure.
So we were there. I think we got our flat for maybe a week. Maybe it wasn't 2 weeks. It was a week. It was a little blur. But here's the story. In April of 06, it was May, my wife and I were in New York seeing this rainforest benefit. Sting, Billy Joel, James Taylor, Sheryl Crow. It was unbelievable. It was at Carnegie Hall. We leave Carnegie Hall. We drove up. We were tired as hell. We went to Carnegie Hall. We needed to eat. We didn't eat before the show. We got stuck in traffic. We said, let's eat after the show. 11 o'clock at night, we go into a New York a beautiful restaurant, but we're sitting down. And the tables are so close, you can't help but hear the person next to you talking. The place empties out. It's 1 o'clock in the morning, and this couple, 2 tables over, ordered this really sexy dessert. It was beautiful. Had all this stuff on it. And I looked over, and we were eyeing it up as to whether we were going to get one. And I said, that looks good. What is that? And they're like, this. They said, you want a bite? And we're like, no, but thank you. And we struck up a conversation. The dude turns out to be the VP of global marketing for Philips, the TV people. They make my Sonic toothbrush, right?
I gotcha. Yep.
We get to talking about Europe and the World Cup and He's like, you need World Cup tickets? And I'm like, well, we're going over. I couldn't get the tickets for the Italy-US game. You want them? I got as many as you need. What do you need? This is like 8 minutes into a dessert with this guy. And I'm in New York, and it's 1 o'clock in the morning. You can have
a spoon of ice cream or a World Cup ticket.
So these are $2,000 tickets that you cannot get anywhere. Everybody in Italy's selling their children to drive 3 hours into Germany and see Italy
Right.
play the United States of America. And by the way, this is the Italian team that won the World Cup. So
Right.
this is a legendary Buffon. I mean, just all the great players, right?
Sure.
So the guy says to me, and I'm like, it's late at night. You're not BSing me. He's like, no. He said, I can take my card. He said, I'm doing a really special thing. You know what he was doing? He was taking firefighters over to Europe, and firefighters from all over the world. Phillips sponsored this. They brought firefighting soccer teams. If you had a firehouse in Brazil, a firehouse in Frankfurt, Germany, a firehouse in London, Phillips put together a thing that they flew firemen who played soccer over to in 06 now. This is after 9/11, that it was a celebration to honor World Trade Center. And Phillips did this. And he said, I don't know anyone in Kaiserslautern. So unless you're there that day, if you're willing to be there, I'm willing to give you 2 tickets. I'll give you 4 tickets. He said, whatever you want. My wife and I left that night. I think I went back to the hotel and I called United Airlines and started moving flights around. We wound up going to Zurich, Switzerland. So I saw another celebration. We moved all of our flights around on 4 weeks' notice because I had 2 tickets. And we went to the game, and the U.S. tied Italy. It was one of the greatest. Memory, McBride bleeding. The stadium was built in 1912 or 1914. Hitler gave rally speeches in this stadium. The stadium's like the Lambeau Field, old school in Kaiserslautern. You have to walk up a hill to get the stadium's on a hill. It was built in like 1910, 12, World War I. So like, I've had these crazy soccer experiences, right? So to think that things like pitches out on the harbor and all this thing you're thinking of, this is where the corporate people get involved. And I still tip my cap to Phillips and my friend who Steve, still in my life, 16 years daughter, went to Towson State. So we've had lunches together. We're still involved. But this guy I met gave me tickets for a World Cup game, and it was that big of a deal. And it was one of the greatest sporting events I've ever attended. I mean, it was 45,000 Italians singing, Volare,
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Cantare, oh. So that sort of spirit and what I saw in Dortmund, what I saw in Gelsenkirchen 16 years ago, to think that could be coming to our city for a month for real, not like if we got a semifinal game or a quarter or something like that, it would be bigger than any Super Bowl. And I guess I'm screaming into the woods, screaming about it, Billy, but I don't think people really understand what a big deal this is.
No, and I think like you said, I think it's the if for some reason the way the schedule breaks out, like the German team or the Italian team or the English team or the French team or the Brazilian team, like,
well, Baltimore's going to be a great place to base because of the train, because of transportation,
and
all of that.
These people travel, and again, it's that whole concept of when we have an opportunity to bring people to our town, they never leave disappointed. Like, people are always amazed at how cool Baltimore is once they come here.
Well, the FIFA committee apparently came in for a Raven game last year that was lively and saw the stadium full. Keeping in mind, we've put on 2 really big soccer games down there that have sold out. I mean, the Chelsea game was as big an event as ever been in that state. It was the hardest ticket. It was up there with the Broncos playoff ticket or anything. I mean, it was a $300 get-in for a friendly. For real. I was out on the street and saw it. People couldn't get in and to see Ronaldinho play, right? So I know what the potential of this is, bigger than anything anybody realizes. And I really have to tip my cap to Terry for getting it to this point, after 15, 16 years, because it's beyond my wildest expectation. It's allowed me to tell these stories that have been in my golf bag for years and years and years about dreams and hopes and things I've experienced that I've wanted for Baltimore, really.
So I don't know how you do it, and I don't know what the right place to do it is, but when they run Preakness somewhere during the broadcast, there needs to be someone with the sign that says, like,
bring the World Cup here,
World Cup next, here. And then any of these sort of potentially internationally viewed broadcasts, we have to figure out a way to get someone to hold a World Cup Baltimore sign that gets on the broadcast. Like, we need to start planting all these subliminal messages in all these people and all. I mean, I don't know what else
Well,
you
look,
do,
dude,
right?
you're a really
Like,
big
you go out
sports
in the
fan, and your kid
streets.
plays soccer, right?
Sure.
Yeah, and you didn't even know how many games are in the World Cup or how
I
they
mean,
like
I have concepts,
literally
but I
this
don't
is
understand the management of all the cities and all that stuff. So it's very fascinating,
middle of June. I'm being told right around June 15th, 16th, 17th. They're not going to make any announcements the first 2 weeks, but in the third week of June, they're going to set this. So there's 6 more weeks of lobbying, pushing, pulling.
I just don't know what that means. I don't know what you do as a concerned, excited citizen. I don't know what that means, right?
Well, the
Like,
first
I
thing is
don't know.
understanding what it is and understanding the value of it, and there's understanding the conversation around this is not the IRL, right? You know
We
what I
just
mean?
got that, right?
Like,
We're
so
good. You
I
just downloaded us, and now we're saying, well, hell yeah, I want a bunch of European people hanging out in Fells Point, throwing parties every day. Of course we want that. They drink a lot of beer. They eat a lot of crab cakes. Let's go. How do we do this?
we're going to be an affordable place for them too. We're going to be the place
Absolutely.
that New York and DC are going to be like, how much? And here we're going to say, no, come on in, stay for a week.
Sure.
Be Airbnb our flat. Do all that stuff, right?
Right. Or stay out in the Hunt Valley at that, whatever that one hotel is that's right on Schwann Road,
Yeah.
and then take the light rail downtown for the game or for the parties or whatever. I mean, there's so many things that people can put together to make it fun. Sure.
What's your F1 thing? You've been watching F1? What's that all about?
It's like a friend mentioned something and I like, yeah, whatever. I have no idea. Sure, sounds cool. And then Netflix has the Drive to Survive series, which is like um reality TV.
Hard
It's like,
Knocks. Yeah, it's Hard
yeah,
Knocks.
Hard Knocks. There you go. That's what um it is so, the cars are so technically advanced, like technology. The business is crazy. The money is ridiculous. And like, it's just a really good, solid
Well, you come
reality
from a car
TV.
family. Your dad loves
But
cars.
I can appreciate a good looking car. You know what I'm saying? But I don't have any, I didn't grow
Have you
up
been to a
fixing.
race? Have you ever been
No,
to
no, no,
NASCAR? You didn't
no,
come downtown
no,
for IRL?
no,
Nothing?
nope, nope.
Well, the IRL, first off, really loud, really fast, like really loud. Like the first thing when they started zooming around my building
Yeah,
downtown, but I knew
crazy.
that. But the real, when I went to NASCAR, I went to Dover like 1998. I got old pictures of it. The
Right.
Budweiser car was, Elliott was the driver. So, I mean, I was in the pit, all that stuff. It's just,
Well,
it's very, very fast. It's faster than television. It hurts your
right,
eyes. Your
right.
eyes can't follow it. It goes so fast.
So the build up to this interest is, and it like, my enjoyment is around the business of business, right? Like, we can talk about that and what about that's, so once they start to peel the curtain back a little bit, like, I met a guy who, they had been a NASCAR sponsor in the truck series. And then weirdly, I meet a roofing friend of mine who, he actually sponsors a truck in the NASCAR truck series, Rackley Roofing, if you want to go pick a
Okay.
truck to root for in the truck series.
Okay.
And then you start to find out about the business. I'm talking to my buddy. I'm like, are you making any money on this truck? Hell no, we don't make any money. It's a total, like, it's a passion and marketing. And I'm like, okay, fine. At least that's, what it is.
Well, it makes life more fun if you're
But
into it.
then, yeah, I mean, like, so
I mean, dare I say anybody has a skybox at a Ravens game's really getting their money's worth. They're having
right,
fun. That
right. So here's the bizarre part. Imagine if, who's the 20th best quarterback in football? Pick a name, anybody.
Matt Ryan right now is what I'll give you.
Well, that's a bad example because he won't work for my story.
Ryan Fitzpatrick, he fits every story.
Yeah, no, he doesn't either because he's been around too long. But let's talk about Jared Goff, right? So Jared Goff, if he was a NASCAR driver, would probably pay $1 million to the team to be able to drive the car. And then if he goes through a season and he wins a bunch, all of a sudden it changes.
Well, it's like being a golfer. You're paying to be out there unless you cash, right? Like literally.
Yes, I
Your
guess.
costs are sunk. Then you just have to go win the
But
prize
this
money.
is like literally, I'd like to be the driver of your truck series truck. So I'm going to pay you $600,000 for you to give me the seat because I believe I can drive your truck and win enough races that someone is then going to choose to pay me. Like that's pretty bizarre.
Well, that means you
The,
really want to drive a truck.
the other one, right? The other one was Netflix again has the story of Bubba Wallace and like his 2021 and like he's the only African American driver in NASCAR and went through all the stuff during the pandemic and the Black Lives Matter and it's so it takes you through those times. But again, peels the curtain back a little bit on the world. Denny Hamlin, who is a NASCAR driver, and Michael Jordan own a NASCAR team that Bubba Wallace drives for. Meanwhile, Denny Hamlin drives for a car that I think is owned by Joe Gibbs and races against his driver and his team every weekend and has to decide, like at the end, whether he should win or whether he should let his team driver win. It's just, there's some weird stuff in all this auto racing things that I was never really aware
It's
of.
like a trainer having 3 horses in the Kentucky Derby, right?
Yes, it is. It's very fascinating, and both those series kind of give you a little bit of business, a little bit of competition, a little bit of sport. Like they're
Suck
fun
me in.
watches.
I got
Yeah,
it. All
yeah,
right.
yeah,
There's no
yeah,
problem.
yeah.
The
And
NFL
and
draft has me sucked in this week, right? And we're trying to figure out if baseball is going to have us sucked in before it's all over with here. But in the meantime, dude, I got World Cup fever and I can't,
I get it.
and
It's very
I
exciting.
just need to express to people what a Baltimore positive concept this is, having World Cup
Yes,
games, you know?
I agree.
Tell me
Well,
what
let me
you're
know
doing,
how we
getting on
help.
roofs. When you're going to fix my roof soon too. So I want to give you some love. Go ahead.
Right, we got roofs. Things are seemingly pretty good for everybody. There's a
Just
lot of
order early.
problems.
I'm gonna tell everybody that.
Yeah,
Order
well,
now.
the lead times are sort of stabilizing, so now we can at least build schedules 13 months out, but um solar panels, lots of problems in that world, lots of issues at the federal level around Commerce Department investigating China and it's just caused everyone to like freeze. Shipments to the US are down,
Can
panel
we make
availability
panels in this
problem.
country, or are they all made
We
abroad?
do, just not very many. And then we do in US manufacturing plants that are owned by Chinese firms and stuff like that. So but
Is the
it's
technology Chinese?
um I don't really know the answer to that. Like, was it US technology that China then stole when we sent it over there to get manufactured? Now they brought it back. I don't know. Could be, right? Like, I have no idea.
It's
All I know
probable.
is that we're trying to ramp up production in this country, but it doesn't even, it's not a drop in the bucket. And then while we have problems with whether it's COVID lockdowns or shipping issues or commerce, US Department of Commerce investigations, all that stuff is putting tons of friction around all of it. And it's what is wildly frustrating is when our government leaders stand in front of everybody and tell everybody how much they need everybody to go solar, but then we're really not dealing with any of the friction around the business to
Yeah, I
try
mean,
and
we're
help
getting to a
us
point now.
do
I
it.
think. I think here in this country, over the next 10 years, where making stuff ourselves is going to have to be what we do, and and more of that made in America that we had
Yep,
back in the '70s here. It's
yep.
pretty obvious that the plague should have opened eyes to that. Billy, I appreciate you, man. We'll get together and we'll argue some more and debate more next week, and we'll have Ravens draft picks to talk about. We'll have a Ravens schedule in a couple of weeks, so I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to that. Really appreciate you, brother.
World Cup Baltimore, go.
There he is. World Cup Baltimore, go. Bill Cole Roofing. Didn't even know what the hell soccer ball was 45 minutes ago. Now look at him. I am Nestor. We are WNST, AM 1570. Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking the beautiful game of football and Baltimore positive.